Welcome to Cryptoland. I'm KRISHNA ANDAVOLU. We're talking about the energy-intensive industry of Bitcoin mining and what that means for the environment. You used to be able to mine Bitcoin on a home computer, but these days, to make a buck as a miner, you need an industrial warehouse full of computer rigs that use a lot of energy. Alice Hines went to Texas, where a booming crypto mining industry is trying to take advantage of the state's abundant supply of energy.
"100 years ago, Texas was at the center of an oil boom that ushered the state and the world into an energy revolution. Fast forward a century, and Texas is at the center of another revolution, cryptocurrency.
Yeah, so this is a natural gas oil field, and what we have out here is a generator on your left, and on the right, one of our manufactured in-house custom data centers. And so we're taking natural gas and converting it into Bitcoin.
Matt Lostro and Brent Whitehead are the co-founders of Giga Energy Solutions, a Bitcoin mining company based out of East Texas.
We are at the source of the oil well, where the gas is produced, pulling the gas straight from the wellhead, going to the generator, producing electricity, and that's how we're mining our Bitcoin.
How do you mine Bitcoin?
So we use this with what are called ASICs, application-specific integrated circuits. These are actually pretty old ASICs. They have a front fan, and there's heat sinks attached to those ASICs because they get up to around 90 degrees Celsius, so close to boiling temperature. And then we displace that heat on the backside.
So this is basically a computer which has one purpose, which is to mine Bitcoin.
Correct. To show you how much the Bitcoin network has grown exponentially, we've gone through 4 parabolic jumps in computing power. One Bitcoin computer today would have powered the entire Bitcoin network back in 2013.
To sustain the explosive growth that's making so many flock to Bitcoin, more and more energy is needed to feed the computers. How does this fit into the oil and gas industry in Texas?
I think it's a perfect alignment, especially a field like this. This field that we're in is almost 100 years old. This was back when the boom started of oil, and people didn't even really know. Like, it was just everywhere you're going, it's like a spindle top. These were true wildcatters that drilled these wells. My grandfather was a true wildcatter in Texas, and people got rich overnight, people went broke overnight, but it was something new, it was a new industry, and I think this is a wildcatter 2.0.
It's crazy to see how fast things have grown, not just even from January of 2021 this year, as well as the Bitcoin network as a whole, how fast everything's growing.
Last year, Matt posted a video of their Bitcoin oil well setup. It went viral, and not in a good way. Critics railed on them for their use of fossil fuels and the operation's carbon footprint. But it's actually not what it seems.
This gas is unable to be sold to a pipeline, so otherwise they're either venting it or flaring the gas. If you are venting the gas, you're just literally venting the methane into the atmosphere. It causes 85 times as much heating as what CO2 does to our atmosphere. It's really bad. We can come in and we can add benefit of lowering emissions while also adding revenue to the community. That's a win-win for everybody.
Lowering emissions isn't a given in the world of crypto. When it comes to Bitcoin mining on a massive scale, the only thing that matters about electricity is that it's cheap. Which is why Texas, the only state in the country with its own grid, is prime real estate for crypto companies.
So we have 3 buildings here, and each one of these buildings house the machines that mine cryptocurrency.
Chad Harris is the CEO of Riot Windstone, a Bitcoin mining company located an hour north of Austin, right next to a decommissioned aluminum smelting plant and its still intact power station. Their Bitcoin mining operation is publicly traded and the largest in the country.
So we actually have a water line that's a mile that goes throughout the site that brings water, puts it through here, and then recirculates it. And what happens is that you can feel there's about a 12 to 16 degree cooler feeling.
Yeah,
and the air that you feel moving is just from the machines. So we don't have any fans in here. So it's actually the machines suck the air in, and it actually works really well.
How many machines do you have?
There's approximately between 95 and 100,000 machines right now.
Okay.
Yeah,
Why so
just
many?
a few. Well, the whole idea, right, in this type of a business, when you build this scale, is to figure out how to put as many machines in as dense as possible using the most possible amount of power.
And so the hum that we're hearing right now
Is the fans. We're gonna go inside.
Okay, I can feel like an insane heat, like desert wind blowing right now. It's actually really strong.
Welcome to my sauna.
It is extremely loud in here and extremely hot.
Like 150 degrees. All of the heat gets captured in here and then it goes out the top of the building. It's like a chimney, right? And we came up with this for our own application, and we originally built it out of 2x4s.
Chad and the folks at Windstone may have started small, but they're not building with 2x4s anymore. They're rapidly expanding their operations and have plans to open up more buildings like this one.
So in total, when we finish, this will be 700 megawatts of capacity that power these buildings. And that's a ton of power.
For context, 700 megawatts is the amount of power a city the size of Philadelphia uses each year. That's why mining is controversial. Ethereum, the second most used cryptocurrency, is currently building a new algorithm to move away from mining altogether. Evangelists tend to talk about Bitcoin as the future of money, a way for anyone and everyone to transact digitally across borders without any middlemen. At the first ever Texas Blockchain Summit, crypto evangelism was on full display. An eclectic mix of Texas's reigning and future Bitcoin titans and a few politicians assembled to pitch and be pitched on why Texas should be home to the next global crypto boom.
My mom and I and my brother, we actually co-wrote this book called Crypto Rich. We teach a lot of millennials. We actually have courses at boot camps where we teach millennials in Houston, Texas, and all over the world.
I DJ after hours on the weekends, and during the day I study crypto and produce podcasts about crypto. I produce music for podcasts. I produce podcasts.
As a county judge in West Texas, did you ever think that you would have to learn so much about cryptocurrency of all things?
Absolutely not.
When you first heard the word like cryptocurrency, what did you think of it?
Money coming back from the dead.
You are all part of a movement that embraces decentralization, freedom, and the harnessing of our God-given creative talents in our communities, in Texas and across the world.
Over the course of a day of speeches, panels, and cocktails, the digital wildcatters staked their claims and made their case.
I believe the Texas Blockchain Council is going to make Bitcoin on par with gold.
We have the opportunity to shape how tens of millions of Americans come to understand the value of this permissionless, open, monetary network.
We are here today in Austin, Texas, to inaugurate a new era.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our first fireside chat with Texas Senator Ted Cruz.
For Bitcoin, you need a lot of energy. And if there's one thing Texas has in large amounts, and if there's one thing Texas knows about deeply, it is energy.
One thing important to Cruz, especially after last year's disaster that infamously had him headed to Mexico, is shoring up the grid.
Because of the ability of Bitcoin mining to turn on or off instantaneously, if you have a moment where there's a power shortage and a power crisis, whether it is a freeze or some other natural disaster where power generation capacity goes down, that creates the capacity to instantaneously shift that energy to put it back on the grid.
Are you worried about the environmental impact of cryptocurrency in general?
No, I think cryptocurrency is a net plus for the environment, and in fact, a big net plus for the environment. Being able to unlock a lot of renewables is really important for the environment. I think being able to take stranded natural gas and put it to productive use is a big positive for the environment. And I also think if you look at the environment, pollution is directly connected to poverty. The poorer a community is, the more dirty the energy is they produce. If you're driving a brand new Tesla, that's great, but if you don't have the money to afford one, that doesn't help. What's exciting about Bitcoin also is that's a room full of entrepreneurs. That's a room full of people that are providing for their family, and that prosperity is a net positive for the environment as well.
Texas's largest Bitcoin miners were similarly eager to make the point that crypto's energy consumption is an asset rather than a liability.
global Bitcoin energy used is inconsequential on a whole when you look at the global energy use.
As long as we're efficient in the process, procurement, and use of energy, you're providing, again, to billions of people, financial sovereignty without any harm to the planet.
In truth, Bitcoin's value to the world is still being determined. But its value to miners is clear. On October 20th, a few weeks after this conference, the currency reached an all-time high price, $66,000.
I didn't realize you'd be working this event.
Oh yeah, I'm everywhere.
You're everywhere.
Everyone everywhere, yeah. There's something Bitcoin, we're here. So.
What is the point of an event like this for you guys?
Exposure to Bitcoin mining, and showing the narrative of, hey, it consumes power, but that's actually a good thing.
So are coin boys the new cowboys?
Texas is Bitcoin country, and Texas is full of cowboys, so this is the wild, wild west right now. It's awesome.
So you're saying that crypto mining in Texas is the wild, wild west?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
So that means that some people are going to lose a lot of money.
Probably.
Yeah, oh yeah, there's people that have no idea what they're doing getting in the space, so.
Where are they?
I don't know.
Hopefully none are here.
Yeah.
The Bitcoin community will be a very good thing for Texas and a very good thing for America.
Without question, crypto mining is booming anywhere anyone can get their hands on cheap electricity. Proponents think that this surge in demand will only help push our energy grids to be more green and stable. But is that just wishful thinking? Here to talk about it are Vice News' Alice Hines, Motherboard's AUDREY Carleton, and data scientist and founder of Digiconomist, Alex DeVries. Okay guys, thank you for joining me, first of all. There's a lot to go over, a lot of promises, lots of reality, but let's set the table by talking about why crypto mining, specifically Bitcoin mining, is so energy intensive. This is obvious, I suppose, to anyone who knows about this, but to at least have the same basis of understanding, let's talk about it for a second. I'll start with you, Audrey. Like, what's the deal? Why does it take so much electricity?
So Bitcoins can only be mined through this kind of solving this complex mathematical algorithm in which all of these ASICs or these specialized computers are trying to land on a string of numbers, sort of random numbers, and everybody's just kind of brute force doing it at one time, trying to guess these numbers, kind of like a lottery ticket, and only one person can get it at any given time. So that generates a ton of waste because all of these guesses at this problem that don't contribute to getting that one coin that are wrong essentially is just energy that is used and it goes to nothing.
So basically, like, the Bitcoin algorithm spits out a new blockchain every, what, few minutes or something?
It adds a new block to the chain every 10 minutes.
Okay, so then every 10 minutes, a whole bunch of people try to solve the new set of riddles together at the same time. The first person who does it gets the thing?
Yeah, they're competing against each other, yeah, not working together.
This network, which consists of roughly 2.9 million devices all around the world, consumes as much electrical energy as a country like Argentina in total. So it's a substantial amount. It's more than 0.5% of our global electricity consumption. It's the world's most environmentally expensive game of guess the number. And the only thing we get in return for that is a system that can at best do maybe 7 transactions per second, and that's it.
So it's a problem because of its scale.
As a result of the extreme energy intensity, a single Bitcoin transaction carries as much carbon dioxide as about 2 million Visa transactions. So in terms of efficiency, it's just performing terribly.
And it's only going to get like worse with time because the nature of the algorithm is such that the more people are kind of in this space and the more coins that are created, the harder it gets. So it's kind of this like feedback loop where it just gets more and more energy intensive and there's more created, which makes it more energy intensive and so on and so forth.
While I was reporting this story, I did hear a different perspective. And, arguably the fact that all of these computers are working on the same problem at once contributes to Bitcoin's use because it's a decentralized ledger. And rather, you have basically all of these different miners who are all trusting each other to be able to add a block to the chain. And that allows the currency to be self-regulating. It allows the currency to basically not have a Federal Reserve or a government which is, controlling how much money to print. So that is what Bitcoin proponents would say is part of the beauty of the system, that so many people are participating in it at once, anonymously, and you can trust each other. Basically, what my takeaway was of looking at a few different ways of doing mining in Texas as part of this reporting was that it really just depends on what you're doing, because the energy makeup that some people are using are so different from others. And so the mining rig that we saw in East Texas, where basically they have a trailer of these ASIC miners hooked up to a oil well. And so the natural gas that is coming out of that well, it could have been connected to a pipeline, but that pipeline was shut down years ago because it wasn't environmentally viable. And so what you have is these oil wells that are basically leaching methane into the air. And so it does output CO2, but it's a much lower carbon footprint than the methane that is being leached currently. And basically this methane is waste. And so they're converting it into energy to run their Bitcoin mines. And it's a win-win because they have a really low cost of energy. But it's just, from what I could see, there's not really any structures in place to make sure that that is actually how mining is occurring versus the crazy economies of scale that we saw at a place like Riot Windstone, where maybe they also say that they're doing things to that they're looking at how to make their energy use more renewable. But I mean, the fact remains that right now they're getting their energy from the grid. So sure. 35% of that is renewable because it's coming just straight from the energy makeup of the grid, but also 50% of that is natural gas. So, and they are, they're constructing more and more mining facilities. They're growing because you need to grow in order to become more competitive in the Bitcoin algorithm. That's just how it works.
I think with the fossil fuels in Texas, it does sort of create this dangerous precedent that incentivizes the existence of these old wells that are flaring. And flaring is really dangerous and really bad, and it creates a lot of nuisance and a lot of disturbance, and getting rid of flaring is good. But that, I think, raises the question of should we just be shutting down and phasing out the fossil fuel industry, getting rid of these wells, revegetating the areas, or if we give it to crypto mines, then that just gives the state a reason to keep these things around that I would argue that we don't need anymore.
It creates a pressure group that is now somewhat dependent upon a kind of thing that you'd rather get rid of.
Yeah, but I mean, there are so many of these wells, and you're right that they're largely unregulated. And I think that what you're saying is all of these questions about, well, what should we actually be doing? I think, you're saying that crypto mining is not the solution to any of these bigger environmental problems that you want to consider and that you report on. And I think you're right. But I guess the question is are we even talking about crypto anymore? And what can these 22-year-olds even do about what you're saying? You're saying we need to regulate flaring, yes. But what does that have to do? Does that are the existence of these these entrepreneurs who are trying to lower the negative impact that is currently, are they really leading us all away from regulation? I mean, or do they really just have nothing to do with it and there's a bigger problem that needs to be solved?
And that's a product of the fact that that's the way the algorithm is designed. That's the way this whole thing was put together.
Yes, Bitcoin has to be inefficient by design because otherwise it probably wouldn't work. It's not a bug, it's a feature, as they say. They're not wrong in that.
Alice, what would a Bitcoin miner maybe say back to that?
I think that a lot of Bitcoin and crypto evangelists who I've spoken to say that they're being singled out, that a lot of industries have energy use that is larger than theirs. I mean, in Texas, one thing that Chad Harris, the CEO of this giant Bitcoin mining facility, told me is that cryptocurrency is less than 2% of Texas energy use right now. He's saying that in defense.
That actually sounds like a lot.
That's exactly right. So it just kind of depends on how you see it. If you see the existence of Bitcoin as being a thing that is transforming society and potentially helping a lot of people, then less than 2% sounds like nothing. If you see it as a way to speculate on basically a speculative asset that is making rich people richer, which is how a lot of other people see it, then less than 2% sounds like way too much.
Mm-hmm. I mean, for people paying attention to the conversation, the big elephant in the room, Bitcoin, proof of work. That's not the only way to make a cryptocurrency on a blockchain function. And if we can take Alex's word for it and the research that he's done, the way that this proof of work concept has played out is net negative for our environment. So I guess the first thing I want to ask is, what the fuck is proof of work? And then what is this other thing that people talk about, proof of stake? Alex, I'm going to let you do this because I hear you have a great explanation.
Well, in proof of work, what you're doing is you're just adding computational power so that you have a bigger chance of winning this block mining lottery. And the more computational power you have just means that there is a bigger chance you get to create the next block for the blockchain. And why do you want that? Well, you get a reward for every block that you make. Now, if you switch that to these alternatives that are out there, the most popular one being proof of stake, then you change it around in the sense that your chance of winning doesn't depend on how much computational power you have, rather it depends on how much wealth you have in the system. So I saw a calculation last week that said if Ethereum, the second largest cryptocurrency of the moment, would switch to proof of stake, which is something that they're planning to do, they could save 99.93% of their current energy consumption.
Aren't there like some ways that people are organizing themselves to think about regulating towards the future in that way so that, you know, the federal government doesn't say, hi, we just got hip to the calculation you did, Alex, about like kilograms of carbon in the atmosphere per transaction, and we're going to ban Bitcoin mining now. So like how is the industry? What's that?
What China did.
What China did, exactly. And maybe not for China's reasons, for America's reasons, who knows? But like what is the energy within the Bitcoin mining community to get ahead of this problem?
Cryptocurrency mining is location independent. So hey, you might solve the problem for the US, but climate change is a global problem. So we also need to look at this from a global perspective. It's not enough to ban cryptocurrency mining in China. It's not enough to do something about cryptocurrency mining in the US. The best change needs to come from within and well.
But I wonder about, Alex, what you've just been saying about different ways to potentially regulate this. Is the real way to potentially regulate this just to move our entire grid more towards renewables, which we're already doing? And then would this even necessarily be a problem? Because if the power that they're drawing to mine is coming from renewable sources, it seems to me like some of the issues get naturally resolved. I, of course, recognize that that's going to take a long time to do.
I mean, yeah, I think whether this is actively a harmful thing does ultimately come down to whether you see cryptocurrency as like a value add to society or not. Like I think that when it comes to green coins, which are emerging, like there are coins that are explicitly like this is an environmentally friendly coin, the same way that you have like environmentally friendly stock like you can invest in ESGs.
Like Dogecoin, you just have to push it and it becomes a pyramid scheme. But then also ultimately people start using renewables to make their shit.
Yeah. I would just be conscientious of like greenwashing though in those areas, because there's natural incentive for green coins because there's a market there. There's people who would only want to buy green coins, but then you would get a lot of people entering that space who are kind of lying about what they're doing. The same way you have, and like most traditional kind of stocks now are like veering towards green things, and fossil fuel companies are saying that they're using green solutions. And I would just be conscientious of greenwashing in this realm in that same way.
So my big question at the end, and like maybe this is a yes or no question, maybe it's not, is like, is mining Bitcoin worth it? Is the externality of Bitcoin mining and its carbon emissions worth the promise of tomorrow?
I actually don't know, and I think that question is really central to everything we've been talking about today, because the questions about energy use could be more or less important based on what the energy is being used for. At the same time, do I think it has potential? I actually do. So I think I'm undecided.
I think it's not worth it. I think that the number of instances and potential instances in which crypto mines allow for the continuance of fossil fuel infrastructure and coal plants, and coal plants that were going to die that then get a mine attached to them and stay alive. I just don't think we have time for that from an environmental perspective. And I get that there are uses of cryptocurrency that are beneficial in, I get that, but from an environmental perspective, I just really don't think we have time for this weird thing that's happening. That's like keeping all of these power plants running. I just don't think,
There's probably plenty of countries with, let's say, financial systems that aren't working well, potentially corrupt governments. Those are areas where you can maybe make use of this, but at the same time, those places are typically also low-income countries, and the difficulty is that the Bitcoin network and actually most cryptocurrency networks just don't scale. So the moment they get very popular, in the case of Bitcoin, the network just gets congested and people will pay more than $50 per transaction on average just to get a transaction through on the network. Our, let's say, more developed world, we tend to trust our financial institutions. We don't really need a decentralized system that much, and most people are putting their money in Bitcoin simply because they expect the value of Bitcoin to go up. If that's the situation where there is just not much possible practical use, but there is a very large energy impact, then my verdict would be that's absolutely not worth it.
I know I learned that, like, if you're participating in a crypto blockchain, pay attention to the externalities, pay attention to the environmental costs, because it's all of our problems. Thank you again, guys, for joining me. That's it for us today. We'll see you next time.